And they say that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. What do reciprocity, annexation, commercial union, harmonization, free trade, NAFTA, and now the SPP have in common? Nothing! They're all about a corporate takeover of economies and sovereignty. They are all to bring us to the point that we are today. For those of us who are awake, the Security and Prosperity Partnership is part of a bigger plan that has been in the works for a very, very long time and involves the sovereignty of all the nations of the world. In our case, it's a pretext that is leading us into a North American Union, much like the European Union, where countries exist, but laws are made somewhere else. Standards are harmonized, or in our case lowered. Health freedoms are quashed. Civil liberties are curbed, all under the name of security. But most importantly, the most important aspect of a nation's sovereignty, its currency, disappears and is replaced by a new common currency. This plan has been moving forward at the speed of a runaway train since September 11th, 2001. In fact, it was probably a big topic of discussion at this year's Bilderberg Conference in Virginia. There were invitees from 44 nations plus the European Union present. Know who attended from Canada and US? John Adams, Associate Deputy Minister of National Defense. Ian Brody, Chief of Staff in the Prime Minister's office. Isn't that special? Edmund Clark from the TD Bank Financial Group. Paul Desmarais from Power Corporation. He's a regular. Murray Edwards from Canadian Natural Resources Limited. Wonder what they want from him. Roger Martin from the Rotman School of Management of the U of T. Frank McKenna, he moves around a lot, but now he's with the TD Bank Financial Group. Richard Pritchard from the Toronto Star. Heather Reisman from Indigo Books and Music. They like her a lot. She's a regular as well. But by the way, we should all be boycotting Indigo because of their support on Israeli apartheid. Some of the 44 US invitees were Keith Alexander from the National Security Agency, Ben Bernanke from the Federal Reserve System, which is neither a system nor has it a reserve. Timothy Geithner from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, ditto. Paul Gigot from the Wall Street Journal. Donald Graham from the Washington Post. They're the folks that Rockefeller thanked in 1991 for their silence. Richard Holbrook, Frank Pearl, and James Johnson from Perseus Merchant Bank and Private Equity Holdings, LLC. James, by the way, is tasked with finding Obama's running mate. Kenneth Jacobs and Vernon Jordan from the Lazao Brothers banking system. Henry Kissinger, another regular. Jessica Matthews from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, a global think tank, a Rockefeller Foundation. Henry Paulson Jr. from the Secretary of the Treasury. Richard Pearl, he's one of those fine folks that brought us the project for a new American century, calling for a new Pearl Harbor. Condoleezza Rice, David Rockefeller, of course, and two former chairmen of the World Bank, James Wolfenson and Paul Wolfowitz. Boy, would I have liked to have been a fly on the wall at this meeting. But citizens like you and me aren't allowed to know what they talk about, and that tells me we should all be very suspicious. You know, Canada has been going downhill. Canada has been going seriously downhill in the last 34 years, but few people know why. In 1938, our Prime Minister, William Lyon Mackenzie King, took a private central bank and nationalized it. It was called the Bank of Canada. It is called the Bank of Canada. It became the People's Bank, and governments at all levels used Bank of Canada loans at near zero interest to fund all manner of infrastructure and social programs. Tommy Douglas knew it, and that's how we got universal health care. It's also how we got out of the Depression, paid for our involvement in World War II, got our Canada Pension Plan, built schools, hospitals, housing, Canada's great highways, airports, seaways, and more. For 41 years, Canada grew and prospered, all while remaining sovereign. But all that changed in 1974. Funnily enough, around the same time we became a member of the G7 and embraced the principles of globalization. In 1974, our government stopped using our publicly owned Bank of Canada for more than about 2% of the money in circulation. It began to do what you and I do when we need money. It started borrowing from private banks. Now, have you ever heard of anything more ridiculous than that? Talk about regressing. So you may wonder, what has this to do with why we're here today? Well, it has everything to do with it. A very long time ago, the banker Mayer Rothschild said, "Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes her laws." He said that because he knew that those who control the money also control the lawmakers. Our government gave away sovereignty on our money, and that opened the floodgates to what has been happening since. Although Canada has always traded, you can literally track the progression of the dismantling of Canada since the mid-70s. Contrary to what you may think, the Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, CAFTA, Atlantica, Pacifica, Cascadia, TILMA, and the SPP are not about free trade. They are financial agreements that have allowed the corporate takeover of nations. What has happened in the last 34 years by traitorous politicians, too numerous to mention, from all political stripes, should make all Canadians hang their heads in shame. Shame for not knowing our own history. Shame for not holding our governments accountable. Shame for being too comfortable, too complacent, too dumbed down. Shame on us for electing traitors whose allegiance is